Parents and schools need to communicate well, but are the traditional methods of parents' evenings, newsletters and school reports as effective as they could be?
Parents' evenings, good two-way dialogue.
When both schools and parents have less and less time, it's important that any contact they do have is effective.
I guess the element that was missing really was the element in which they were able to contribute to the discussion.
Can family learning facilitate a better relationship between school and parents?
It's going out and saying, what do you want to do? What interests you? And then how are we going to meet that?
Can schools more effectively communicate, allowing parents to participate more fully in their children's education?
We all know that we live very busy lives, and we have more and more head teachers reporting that they can't get hold of parents, or that when they can get hold of parents, the parents don't have time. So I would say time in that issue, and also confidence issues in terms of parents speaking to teachers. Teachers may not realise how little confidence parents have, how nervous parents are in speaking to teachers, how much parents' experience of education will affect how they deal with their children's teachers.
Holden Lane High School in Stoke-on-Trent is getting ready for one of the most stressful nights in the school calendar, Parents' Evening.
There are all sorts of things that can go wrong. Parent arrives at the school and the place where the parents' evening is being held isn't signposted, so they don't know where they're going. There are then very long queues for every teacher, and every teacher is running late, so you're then late for your next appointment with the next teacher. And the whole thing can become a real circus of getting later and later and later and more frustrated, and the 10 minutes becomes eroded to 5 or to 2. There are all sorts of ways that schools are trying to overcome that, yes, rather deadly traditional parents' evening scenario.
Improving communication with parents has just recently become a top priority at Holden Lane after the Parent-Teacher Association was disbanded because of lack of interest.
It doesn't exist at all, the PTA at Holden Lane. A newsletter article went out to say we need parents to turn up, and unfortunately not enough people turned up, and so there were not enough people to have a committee.
Unfortunately, we're in a society now where people are really busy during the day, and I'm not saying that they aren't bothered about the children, but to come in from work, to turn around, especially if you're on your own, don't know whether people can actually spare, it's going to sound awful, but the effort.
If you're a working parent full-time, you know, this sort of evening time is precious, isn't it? You get home, you're doing other things. I think it's when they schedule, and there's nothing wrong with a Saturday morning.
With no PTA, Holden Lane has been relying on Parents' Evening to make contact. But often, their hardest to reach parents just don't show up.
Normally, all the good kids, we don't need to, all we have to do is a pat on the back, thumbs up, and that's it. It's normally the more challenging pupils that we need to speak to the parents more, we need more time with them, and they don't come.
Okay then, cheers, thank you.
In a bid to get feedback from some of their hardest to reach parents, Holden Lane sent out a questionnaire. They found out that some parents were dissatisfied by how the school was communicating.
One of the first things that we did is we did a questionnaire to parents in a Year 10 introduction evening to GCSE. We did find out that they had quite a few issues with some of the things like the parents' evenings, the reports, and they wanted more information really from the school, and they wanted to get more involved.
I think parents need the communication, I think a little bit more modern. You know, they can send me an email alert, they can send me a text alert if it's not. They do text alerts for absence, but I prefer if they sent everything to my email box. You know, I use emails at work. I can check if something is not attended in the day. I'm on his case then as soon as he comes out of school, you see, and I'm ready, prepared.
I do feel that sometimes the schools are very quick to give negative information over. They either phone you to say that there's a problem with your child, or they're suffering with the studies, or there's a particular attend. There's always seems to be a darker issue, and it's very rare that you get a phone call to say, can I just say that, you know, how well such and such a person has done since within a timescale.
They were talking about general communication things, that if something was cancelled, for example, that they might not know about it straight away. So obvious things like parents' evenings, that they wanted 3 chairs when they came because there wasn't one for their child to sit at, and that wasn't right. Just things like that you might not even think about. They cottoned onto newsletters. They were telling us how often they wanted a newsletter sent home, and they'd noticed that there was a change in there. So, that they pick up on things, and they wanted a lot more information. A lot of them were talking about the fact that they use the internet now, and they wanted the information to be there for them, as well as posted home, so that they had the chance to access their emails at work. They could see straight away if there was anything happening. We're really trying to get to the hard to reach parents. We need them to think that this school is not somewhere where they should feel nervous. We really want them to come in and get involved.
A good relationship between school and home is seen as a crucial factor for parental involvement. At Holden Lane, Assistant Head Rob Kelsall is just at the beginning of rolling out a new communication strategy, but first he wants to make sure the whole staff are on board.
We've been doing a lot of research at the moment. Many staff might feel as though they don't actually feel it appropriate for parents to be in there. They may feel that a child should be behaving in the classroom without their parents, and that's part of being at school and being part of a class.
In order to help Rob motivate his staff, we brought in education consultant Edward Gildea.
When you have a big change initiative, what you always have to start off with is an audit of where we are now. So what I'd like to do is conduct an instant 10-minute audit with you about the role of parents in the school and your communications with parents as they stand at the moment, and see if we can get a result within about 10 minutes.
I kind of like the notion of starting very freshly, inviting people's concerns, input, opinions, so that they feel that they were part of it from the start. Because it's always a disaster when you end up saying, people saying, we weren't consulted, this is the first we've heard of it. And if they were in at the start with a blank flip chart piece of paper, then they can't claim they weren't consulted.
Great. Praise postcards. Thank you. Excellent.
I hope that Edward will really motivate staff further to get involved with parents. His approach, well, I'm hoping, will be light-hearted, but also will make staff think about the fact of how much parental engagement they do at the moment.
Join the melee. Just your own subjective view of it. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's always good to get people up and engaged, get people making their input, let them air their views, do their voting, feel engaged with a sense of what their priorities are, for them to understand that this is going to be part of a major cultural change, I think, in the school.
I think that the issue with the parents, we're very aware of the fact that our parents are supportive if they think that the school is working, and the negative culture that we've got needs to be broken.
Just to spend time after school with the parents, but obviously there's a work-life balance then for the staff who have families that would need to go, to see their families after school. So it's not perhaps as easy, as it sounds.
So would you say the use of planners is a genuinely two-way process in which not only are you using it to communicate with parents, but they are using it to communicate with you? No, more. I'm seeing more no's than positives. Newsletter, is it a two-way?
Whenever you want to develop something, then the big resistances are teachers saying they have no time, and which they often haven't. I mean, it's an incredibly full-on job driven by a timetable, and then you've got to go home and prepare lessons and mark work, and there's a never-ending kind of cycle. So time is always huge. So you're going to need some change champions who are going to feel enthusiastic and put the effort in because they have genuine ownership of it, and then try and spread it sort of infectiously out from that. And that's where I think the notion of having non-teaching staff, someone who hasn't got a huge teaching load, hasn't got to mark books and so on, can actually do that level of parental engagement and help the families, support the families through the tough things they might be going through that has impacted on their child's progress.
One person that's got experience of dealing with some of the sensitive issues facing parents is Lynn Jarvie. Like a lot of parents, she was also once a student here.
And the important thing with Lynn is she'd been working as an attendance key worker. She was dealing with sort of 80 to 90% attendees, so she was looking at what the issues were and actually phoning home. And so she was building up a lot of contacts in community. She's learnt a lot of skills into talking to parents and getting them into school, you know, and those are the skills that we need for this job, really.
You know, we could do with you coming down and, you know, you would be able to see some of these subject tutors. That wouldn't be... I think we've all got to try new things, and if they're not prepared to try, then we're never going to know if we can get those parents on board. We've got to try everything possible. You know, we want them to get involved, and we want them to feel that they have got enough information to be able to help their child to get the best of their education. You get some parents that don't like coming in school, and then to be confronted by the head of the school or a deputy head probably is a little bit more daunting than speaking to somebody like myself who isn't a teacher, and they seem to feel more relaxed, and they're able to actually speak about things that they probably wouldn't raise with them.
As part of their new communication strategy, Holden Lane wants to enable parents to feel comfortable coming into the school.
It's always been a school where if there has been a problem, you know, they've always rung me, and I think in my time that didn't used to happen. So no, I think they give you every opportunity to come in when they need, you know, when it fits, like so.
You've got to show you're interested and you care and you want the best for them, but at the same time you don't want to push too hard because they'll just, you know what I mean, she's 15, nearly 16 now. It's difficult to keep her on track, so it's just trying to find that balancing act. I think it's just about right how often I do come in.
Today Lynn has set up some meetings for herself and Rob with parents, but she's much more used to dealing with them over the phone. Edward will sit in and observe how they communicate, but first he's got some tips for Lynn.
So you've got this meeting coming up with the parents, and I'm going to be observing it. And I guess what I'm going to be looking for a little bit is the quality of the dialogue between the two of you.
Right.
Because you've clearly got an agenda, because the school wants the children to get such and such a result, and the action plans have been drawn up by the departments. And in a sense, you'll feel that it's gone well if they say, thank you for the action plan, yes, we'll do what we can, and go off and do what they can with that.
Whether I've made myself clear and
whether you've communicated that way. But then the other question is whether maybe they've got some agendas or concerns or difficulties of their own, and whether they feel free or get the opportunity to raise those with you, because there might be some deeper problems. And sometimes you've got, you know, a superficial problem of someone's underachieving in a subject, but there might be something deeper going on.
For the,
and so sometimes being sensitive to little parts of their body language. Well, you might start off by noticing sort of signs of tension. It could be sitting back a little bit, or arms crossed, or just in the eyes, and a tension in the face and around the mouth, and nervousness. And always in these conversations, it's noticing the moment when they relax. If you suddenly see someone kind of the shoulders drop down because they feel you've been listening, or they feel that you're getting through to something that they want to open up about or share. But while there's a kind of, they're tense and being defensive, they might kind of say yes, we'll do that, and not really mean it. But if they're relaxed, then you're thinking, they're much more likely to deliver, and there's a partnership forming. Well, she knows the community and she knows the parents, and I think that's her big advantage, that she can talk to the parents as a parent rather than as a teacher. And so she'll be a lot less threatening, and they might be much more ready to open up, relax, and not feel defensive. I think for a lot of parents, if the school wants to intervene, and it's, you know, if it's a deputy head teacher particularly, or a head, parents are going to feel defensive, and that's quite natural that they should. But I think Lynn, because, you know, she's grew up here and knows everyone so well, and is a non-threatening person, she'll perhaps enable the parents to open up a little bit more and therefore engage them constructively.
Hi, Mr. Gordon, Mrs. Jarvie.
Hello, pleased to meet you.
And Mr. Council.
Hello, good to meet you.
Pleased to meet you.
Mr. Castle, assistant head. Thanks for coming, and thanks for waiting for us. There's a group of pupils that we've asked all the parents to come in over the last couple of weeks. And what we're going to be doing with them is we're setting up action plans with the parents to actually try to make sure that they get those 5 A to C's that are critical for them to get a job or college.
Most of the talking was being done by Rob, and by the school was doing the talking. But we didn't really have dialogue. And I think that's a big change, that notion that we should be listening and jointly solving the problems.
Hi, it's good to meet you. Hello, it's Mr. Council. So that's, you know, she obviously is behind with a course with there quite a bit. And
she is,
yes. So if you can check that planner all the time just to make sure there's any comments in there about homeworks or about the after-school classes, that's on a sort of a day-to-day basis, but you will also have this fortnightly contact right the way through to the exams now.
We got lots of agreement, but I kind of wondered what that agreement was really based on back in the home, and I think that would be the next step forward, to see these as an opportunity to listen to the parents. And there wasn't the opportunity really for the parent to actually say, well, we've got these issues at home.
Right, well done.
How was that?
A couple of useful meetings there, yes. What did you feel you gained from those then, Lynn?
I did pick up a lot, obviously, with Mr. Council being in on those meetings from parents. There wasn't enough information there to be able to relay back to parents to be able to go away with stuff to then act upon.
And you had 2 wonderfully cooperative parents. They were a little nervous, but they were kind of agreeing, and you didn't have a rough time with either of them.
No.
But sometimes you might. And I guess the element that was missing really was the element in which they were able to contribute to the discussion. Something that says, tell us from your point of view why we might have had this site slipping off. You know, they're supposed to be getting C's and they've slipped below, or they've missed those assignments. Were there some issues? Are there some current issues? But there was an opportunity there and then to say, from your point of view, is everything going fine, or are there some areas where...
I think that's really important, because often it isn't just individual subject areas, it is something as an overview that there might be a reason of why they're underachieving, and that'd save us a lot of time actually to listen properly to the parents.
So there was an opportunity, a bit of diagnosis there, and also to say, well, this is a partnership. I mean, partly you've got an agenda, get them through their GCSEs at 5 A stars or 5 C grades. They might have a slightly different agenda, and it's worth knowing what that is. And their children, what's motivating their son or daughter at the moment? How motivated is she? If you say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated is she or he at home about their schoolwork? And they say 1 to 10, oh gosh, she might be just 4.5, They start thinking quite specifically, because there's not a right or wrong answer on a scale of 1 to 10. You actually get some answers that say, well, if she's a 5, what might make her feel a 6? What could we do? What could you do as parents? What could we do as teachers that would move her from a 5 to a 6? And how would that feel like? And then that's moving into a coaching technique rather than we're just putting the screws on technique. Mm-hmm. And they've got their own agenda and their own ambitions. And what are their ambitions? So with a bit of luck, these 2 meetings will achieve the result, and those kids will get their 5 A to C grades or whatever. But in terms of the nature of those meetings, I think the school might think about how it can turn those into a genuine dialogue that is finding out perhaps what the root cause of some of the problems are, and are there some deeper issues that we need to plumb into and solve.
Improving one-on-one communication is seen as essential for schools, but Holden Lane are also keen to explore more imaginative ways of involving parents. We're taking Lynn to visit James Brindley High School, just 2 miles away. They've discovered a way to break down some of the communication barriers is to engage teachers, parents and children in family learning activities. The added extra incentive for parents was the opportunity to explore some of their latent abilities, as well as creative potential. Lynn's sitting in on one of their most popular classes. It's the go-karting club, where they've incorporated some real mechanical engineering into the building and racing of the carts.
So, can anyone give us a few ideas?
Now, there had been a survey of parents in terms of what do you want us to help you with. And one of the things that was quite emotionally, quite high really, was this one of help us to play with our children. Which struck a chord really, because there was a certain cry of, you know, we want to be involved, but how do we want to be involved?
I came to this school as a teenager, and I don't think my parents were ever involved in anything. I don't think they were ever invited to be involved in anything. If the parents are isolated and not kept informed and things like that, then people don't want to know from either side. I feel that when they get to that age, they don't communicate. When he gets home from school, if you asked him what he'd been doing, he'd just say, oh, nothing. And I think you get more involved, you get to see what sort of things they get up to, and you meet some of the teachers.
We need to make sure that those who've got oil in. Now, I saw you doing a check on the vehicle before.
If you've got a passion like I have for something and you can bring that to the school, then people pick up on that straight away. It's the same as a classroom practitioner. If you're putting enthusiasm into the subject, then the students pick up on that straight away, and if they're enjoying it and you're enjoying it and everybody's learning something, then you know that's a perfect scenario.
Can anyone remember from last week what these bits are called? Pistons.
For some children, they actually see their parents being involved in it. Their parents value it. So if it's something that parents are giving up their time to come and do, learning goes up the scale. And we also wanted to be part of the community itself, because we saw a need there where many of our parents had actually left school with perhaps not the best education that could have been offered at the time.
The school did some extensive analysis to find out exactly what the parents were looking for. And with some surprising results, some of the parents and children have started their own blues band.
At first I never thought I'd be able to do it, but after 3 lessons and a bit of practice, it was coming together, and it makes you feel better, so it pushes you a bit more.
You're starting any instrument, it takes a lot of dedication, practice and commitment. And what I was really, really impressed with, that the dedication of parents who came after school, that was great for me, because this is what the whole concept is. It's about family learning.
It's breaking down the barriers so that they were more comfortable at actually then getting onto some of the other things, like being involved in our parent voice, being confident enough to actually say to the school, well, you say this, but actually it's not happening. And being involved then in evaluating some of our policies, and it all starts to move on. It's this one of feeling that they are a partner.
The school also took part in an externally run award scheme, which audited and supported them on reaching a higher level of communication with parents.
It's the process of going through it. It's giving a bit of impetus there. It's having an action plan. It's saying to parents, we cannot get this without your help. Therefore, when we get it, we all celebrate that kind of award. So it's all of those kind of things. And you do see a difference. You see a difference in relationships. It's much better when you're talking to children to actually say, well, I do know your mother, I do know your father.
To round off her visit to James Brindley, Lynn is meeting up with Shirley Elamori from the Leading Parent Partnership Award and Kath Reynolds from Family Learning, who both helped support the improved communication programme at James Brindley.
Parents coming into school, I think, has an association with misbehaviour, underachievement. It's not necessarily seen as something positive if your parents come into school, and that's the mindset that we do have to work on to change. And that's what's been positive here at James Brindley, that they've said, come in and get involved with this. This is a really good project. Your kids want to do it. You'd have fun as well. And that's really been a major selling point for them.
One school recently did an evaluation of attendance at consultation evening and realised that it was actually parents from one estate who didn't come because the buses didn't run after 7 and very few of them had cars. So they sent the school minibus out and attendance increased by about 3-fold, I think. But they haven't realised that because they haven't done the analysis.
I thought it was absolutely fantastic the way the parents were interacting with the kids. I think perhaps if we start off in the early years, then yeah, I think it would take off quite well. I don't think it'd take off quite as well with the older section of the school, but the early years, starting in year 7, yeah, I think it'd be good.
And sometimes you find that, you know, there's an accusation with parents of they've got low aspirations. That wasn't the case around here. You know, they wanted better for their children than they'd had. What they needed was, how do we go about doing it? So things like adult learning was a mechanism. It was a way of actually engaging parents with their children in something that was a bit of fun and something that they could achieve at and they could share and celebrate.
The hard-to-reach parents is the key to all of this, because it's the parents who are the hardest to reach that are probably the parents you need to reach most.
There are going to be many parents in this school who would want to get those kind of events up and running at the school. And that's where it'll link in with the family support, adult literacy classes, college in the community, all these kind of things that we can use to improve the skills and the confidence of adults who are hard to reach and hopefully get them involved, and it can make such a difference to their child's life.